So, today I want to talk about what women can learn from some of the housewives on TikTok. And what inspired this video is the current trend of women using social media, and especially TikTok, to vent about how miserable they are being housewives or to put their husbands on blast for their infidelity or bad behavior. And a recent example of this is a woman who did a series on TikTok about how she found out her husband cheated on her in Vegas.
You in the comments, ladies. My man would never. I thought so too. So we had a work convention in Vegas, some kind of construction convention. Apparently on Thursday night, he went to dinner. He went back to Vanderpump Cocktail Gardens with his work people. It was a work event. And then I guess they all decided to go to the strip club. I have nothing against strip clubs. I have something against going to a strip club alone in Vegas while hiding it from your wife. Claiming nothing happened, but he doesn't remember anything. He was drugged. How dare I question him? How dare I be mad? And he's turning it back on me, telling me I have no compassion. I'm psychotic. Our divorce is gonna be epic. He said the most out-of-pocket shit to me. An innocent man doesn't act that way.
And in response to the series, some of the women who watched it took it upon themselves to find out where her husband worked. They sent his employer the videos and attempted to get him fired. And so the wife did a tearful follow-up video asking them to stop because her husband pays all of the bills.
Thank you for all of the love and support and the feminine rage. I'm angry and you're angry for me, and I get it because I'm in this too, but please, my life has been torn upside down. We are a one-income household. I'm a stay-at-home mom. Please don't threaten, and please don't try to call my husband's place of work. You're just going to gonna get me worse. This is my life. And I never in a million years would have thought that this would blow up the way it did. I know we're angry. I'm so angry. I'm so angry at him, but please, guys, there are other ways to support me. And cutting off my financial stability is not it. I beg of you, please.
And I'm seeing a lot of men give their opinion on this story. And so I wanted to give a woman's perspective to put out a narrative that's actually beneficial to women and say some things that I don't really hear the men saying about this. So I think the first thing we can learn from this as women is pretty obvious, ladies. Never be fully dependent on a man. Even if you are hypergamous, always have a backup plan. And I've said this many times on my channel. And as many of you know, a few months ago, I actually interviewed a group of Black housewives and stay-at-home moms, as well as divorced women. And a reoccurring theme in my conversation with them was that most of them had their own money and their own separate bank accounts, or they had their own hustles. They had skills and education they could use if they decided to get back in the workforce, or they advised the women listening to do those things after experiencing divorce. So if you want to hear from the horse's mouth on how you can protect yourself as a housewife or a stay-at-home mom, definitely join the channel and become a member, or join the Patreon to hear those interviews. The links are in the description box. Because it's one thing to hear me or other women with no experience tell you to protect yourself, but it's another thing to hear it from actual housewives, stay-at-home moms, kept women, or women who were married on how to protect yourselves financially when you are a housewife or a stay-at-home mom. So often in these conversations about Black women and hypergamy, we hear two different extremes. The conversation has taken off on social media. Now all Black women are talking about is leveling up, dating up, marrying up, as we should, right? But because a lot of us are speaking from a place of having no experience, there's a lot of binary thinking and extreme messaging being put out. One side is completely trying to scare women out of being hypergamous by using all of these horror stories of men leaving their wives and children destitute and homeless, or cheating or abusing them. And the other side is completely romanticizing hypergamy without giving you the downsides or giving enough specific information on how women can be secure individually while simultaneously being hypergamous. And it's not to say there's no truth in either of those extremes, but I just feel like the more realistic part of the conversation falls somewhere in the middle. And I will say that I think that most Black women know how to be independent. We've literally been forced and conditioned to be independent. It's literally been beaten into our heads since we were born. So I think a lot of Black women specifically are bringing that into the hypergamy conversation out of fear and because of what they've been taught. And there is a little bit of concern trolling in there as well from people and from other women who frankly don't want to see other Black women be hypergamous and be kept women. There's a lot of that going on as well, because one thing Black women know how to do, we know how to make our own money. We know how to go to school and get an education. We know all this stuff already. We don't need a lot of reinforcement when it comes to being independent. I will give us some credit. But because there are still very young, impressionable Black women and girls listening to these conversations about hypergamy, I do think that avoiding either side of the extreme is crucial and it's necessary. And let me say this, I do think that some situations call for radical thought and extremism. Sometimes that is necessary to make change, but that doesn't apply to every single life scenario. I do feel it's important to caution Black women on what could go wrong in hypergamy or being a housewife or dating a high earning man. And I also think it's important to reinforce that Black women are allowed to be spoiled. We're allowed to be pampered just like every other group of women, and we're allowed to rest sometimes. And y'all know I fully support spaces that allow a form of escapism for Black women. But in my opinion, spaces that give practical advice and solutions are also very necessary, which is what I've always aimed to deliver on my channel. Now, something else I think we can learn from housewife TikTok as women is what I touched on in my last video. Stop oversharing, ladies. Please just stop, because this woman got herself into all this unnecessary drama all because she wanted clicks and views on TikTok. And some of you were confused about what I meant by oversharing in my last video, which I don't know how, because I gave specific examples, but some of you don't know how to show your personality and who you are without oversharing. And I have a video coming up on very specific ways you can do that for those of you who need a little extra help. But what this housewife did on TikTok is the perfect example of what I meant by oversharing. And I'm not at all blaming her for what her husband did. I think she has every right to vent or share her experience, but there are better ways to do it. And I really don't give a shit about her husband being outed. It's not about protecting him either. But oversharing, no matter how right you are, ladies, it will almost always come at a cost. Because even if this woman had her own income, if her husband's financial contribution is still significant to the household and he were to lose his job over this, it would still be a one income household and she would be the breadwinner. And we all know that most women don't prefer that position either when they're married with children. So either way, it would have been a loss to her and her children. So it all comes back to how she shouldn't have gotten her ass on TikTok and shared anything about what was going on in her personal life. And again, it's not about protecting her cheating husband, because I know some of y'all are going to come in here, oh, why should we protect him? It's about protecting herself, her children, and her peace of mind. Because now, as a result of oversharing, she had to come back through and backtrack in a video. She had to cry, and now her TikTok account is private. But now, guess what? The damage is done. She probably got her friends and her family calling her now. She probably feels embarrassed, and it's because she overshared. And something else I think we can learn from these TikTok housewives is that many of them are bored and they're just looking to add excitement to their lives. I think some of them are being genuine, but some of this is them really trying to go viral on TikTok. They need an outlet from, their husbands and from their home life. And so they're choosing TikTok as the outlet. And I saw on Twitter where they said this particular housewife filmed herself packing her husband's clothes and throwing him out. But now that we've seen her follow-up video pretty much begging people to stop calling her husband's job, how likely is it that she actually kicked him out when he is the breadwinner? It's just not adding up. And if you notice in the first video, her energy was almost kind of lighthearted and borderline playful. She was cracking jokes, almost like she didn't think anything would come of what she was putting out there. And I know in one clip she said she was bisexual and she was perfectly okay with her husband going to a strip club. I think her cutoff was, hey, just don't, do it without me. So honestly, considering that and with the way she was behaving throughout the videos, she strikes me as the type of woman to make this big scene about her husband cheating. She'll be mad for a little while and eventually she'll take him back. We all know women like that, ladies. They take their husbands back or their boyfriends back or their baby daddies back after making this huge scene on social media. And she just strikes me as one of those type of women. But hey, I could be wrong. That is just my observation. Because in my opinion, the second video is where we see the real her. Nothing was funny anymore because shit got real. She didn't expect it to go beyond TikTok and hit where she lived, but she messed around and she found out. And all I'm saying, ladies, is always question these story times you see these women making, and men as well, online, and know that you are only getting a part of the story and you're likely getting a performance for clicks and views. There are so many people online right now trying to go viral. And I also think that TikTok is a way for these women to vent when they're upset and get attention. And I said this before, but I also think that TikTok is a way for these housewives in particular to pander to single women and feminists. And they do this by complaining about their husbands, complaining about men and their traditional lives. And I think it's a way to feel more empowered and feel heard, especially in a time where women empowerment and feminism is extremely popular. Now, we could argue that traditionalism is kind of making a comeback. I do see that as well, but there's still a lot of pushback to that by feminists. And, I think it can be valuable to listen to these housewives who just want to be heard and, because they feel restricted. I think that it's a valuable lesson to learn. I think we can learn how to protect ourselves and keep our autonomy and agency and our own identities while being partnered and explore our own interests outside of marriage and motherhood so we don't end up beholden to men and completely losing ourselves, so much so that we flock to TikTok to share our misery. There's definitely a lesson in that, and I will never completely disregard feminism. It's useful. It has been very valuable to women. But ladies, you also need to understand that balance is key. In the end, most of these women are not going to leave their provider husbands. They're not going to give up their housewife lifestyle no matter how much they get online to complain about it, especially if they have children. Because as much as these women complain, they still don't want to be single mothers. They still don't want to be the primary breadwinners, and they don't want to do it alone. So ladies, just keep that in mind before you go getting all emotionally invested and running to these women's husbands' Facebook and calling their jobs, because these women are not about to mess up their bag. And if there's any threat of that happening, they will backtrack like this woman did on TikTok. And they'll be like, hold up, it wasn't that deep. Now y'all doing too much. These women, they may have valid gripes with being kept, but it's important for y'all to understand that they still don't want to trade places with you. They just want some adjustments to be made. They just want a little bit of tweaking done, okay? And this is kind of how white feminists convinced black women that they wanted to destroy patriarchy, but really they just wanted a better deal within the structure alongside their men. Yeah, it's a similar concept. Same way Michelle Obama keeps on complaining about her marriage, but she would never actually give up the benefits that come with being former first lady. So while y'all are online talking about how marriage sucks because Michelle Obama said X, Y, and Z, she still would choose her life over yours. And so I need you guys to understand that a lot of what's going on is pandering, ladies. And they do this so that they can appear to be more relatable to you. It doesn't actually mean that they're anti-marriage or anti-traditionalism or anti-nuclear family. They would probably do it all over again the same way, but just with a few minor adjustments or a little bit more act right from the men that they married. Okay. And this also reminds me of how Keke Palmer just paid homage to single mothers because she can't fathom raising a child without the father. And the response from actual single mothers was very telling. They came out left and right telling their stories about how hard single motherhood is and how they're making it, but they hate doing it alone. And what some of these women will tell you, some won't be honest about it, but some will. But they've told me that if they could do it over, they wouldn't choose that life again. And I hear that time and time again coming from both single mothers and women who dated and married down or married hypergamously. So ladies, I just want you to keep that in mind before you intentionally date or marry down or choose a life of struggle and single motherhood because you heard Michelle Obama complain about marriage when she had braids in her hair and she's being interviewed by black women because now she's trying to appeal to the everyday single black woman or a single mother. Or because you heard a housewife on TikTok cry about not having agency. Marriage and hypergamy, or at the very least dating and marrying your equal financially as a woman, is still a much better option than hypogamy, especially if you want children. You just got to do everything you can to protect yourself and your interests. And look, if you're one of those women who thinks taking the risk with a man isn't worth it at all because men are so evil and they switch up and they can't be trusted, then it makes no sense to have a man's baby because that is still something that will tie you to him permanently. I said before that I don't get the mindset of men being too risky to marry, but not too risky to sleep with or give your womb to. The logic is backwards to me. Now, I don't want kids personally, so I know it's easier for me to say, just don't have kids at all. If you don't want to be partnered or you don't trust men and they're so evil, don't sleep with them, don't have their babies. If you can't have kids with someone who's at least financially equal to you, then don't have kids. Logically, that is the better option. But if you're unwilling to forego motherhood, because I know a lot of women want kids, and I know that some women, you want children, but you don't necessarily want the man. But if that's your logic, I'd rather hear some more serious conversations taking place about women going to sperm banks and choosing the right donors and preparing women for everything that comes with raising a child alone. And make sure you really want that for you and your children. And also make sure that you have a very strong support system, because the single mothers are saying out of their own mouths how hard it is. And I'm saying this is what we see from most of them. Exceptions don't make the rule. And let me also say that just like everything else, being child free has its downsides as well. But there are also many positives about this lifestyle. And I'll talk more about the pros and cons of being child-free in another video. But until then, definitely check out the interviews I did with child-free women as well, just so you can get some insight on how they're navigating life and planning for their futures. But the point is, ladies, you have options. And with every option, there are pros, there are cons. But you have to be true to yourself. And while doing that, just try not to get sucked up in all of these performances on social media and all of this extreme messaging that serves to scare you out of living the lives that you want to live. If you want to be a housewife, that's fine. If you want to be unpartnered, that's fine. If you want to be child-free, that's fine too. Make the choices you desire to make. Just inform yourself of the risks and protect yourself as best as you can. That is all you can do. And you'll make mistakes on the way because that's life. But don't become so radical in your thinking via feminism or any other form of activism that you make decisions that completely go against logic and won't benefit you in the long run. Because I promise you, after you get done social justice warring, all of the people who were cheering you on and all the people you were fighting for, they're not going to be there to pay your bills and support you and your children when it's over. Just like all of the women who called that man's job trying to get him fired, you think they're going to be around to pay their mortgage if he loses his job? Absolutely not. They might get lucky with a GoFundMe or some other crowdfunding, but that's temporary. Those donations will not last forever. So ladies, just be careful. It's okay to fight for a cause. It's okay to share some things about yourself online. It's okay to want partnership where you have your agency and your autonomy. It's perfectly fine to want all of those things. But the point here is balance is necessary. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and make it harder for yourself by being so extreme in these areas. And also listen to more realistic messaging and people who have experience. So that is all I have to say about this topic for now. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch up with you in the next one.